Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert alongside my dear friend. It's time once again for the adventures of Father Joe Grimaldi. The Father Joe podcast, proudly supported by our great friends at Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield. Today, I want to talk to you about the Lincoln Driver Assist technology. It's called the Lincoln CoPilot 360, and it's so unique, so comprehensive, that Lincoln has trademarked it. That's right. It's a collection of the most popular driver assist technologies designed, available anywhere. They help you keep at ease and driving safely. Now, it includes blind spot detection, driving forward assistance. Allow me to explain that a little bit. If you get too close to a car, you're going to get a beep, 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 beep. Lane on course alert detection, which I love. For example, if you start to stray from your lane, you get that rumble strip feel you sometimes feel when you're in a construction zone. Rear view backing up, monitoring and assist, you love that. Parallel parking assist. Explore the 2019-2020 vehicles that offer Lincoln CoPilot 360 by stopping by Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield, home of the Star treatment. You know, on our last podcast, we were talking about what would you like to see happen again in the Catholic Church? What do you miss most about the older days of the Catholic Church? Both of us, I guess, showing our age. One of the things that I remember vividly, and I wanted to see where we could go with this, and I mean that, like, where can we go with this? I remember in school every year getting my box of envelopes for me to put a little money in that envelope and put it, in the basket as the ushers came out with those long baskets. I was obliged. I had to sign my name, and I would put it in there. And I always felt really good about that. Had a couple of paper outs. My parents made sure that I did the right thing. And you got your envelope there? Yes, I do. Right here. That was one of that was part of the formation of the Christian Army, the Catholic force. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I do, and I think that's great.
Yeah. And you felt good about it afterwards. We've graduated in terms of our giving to the church, and I'm sure there's the ability now to do direct deposit, right?
Correct.
All right, right in there.
Yeah.
And that's how the church survives.
Mm-hmm.
But I always liked the fact that as kids, there was a little bit of work involved with it. And you and I were just talking. You were saying that with the kids on Sunday, well, you go ahead. You tell me, repeat what you were talking about.
Yeah, well, the whole idea is to make sure that the kids know that giving is part of our obligation as Christians. Mm-hmm. And if you teach them to do that while they're young, maybe they'll continue the concept as they grow up. And so that almost in front of the sanctuary of the church, you have this contraption, I call it a contraption, which is very attractive. Some finished carpenter did a great job with it. And so it has a place where you could just drop coins in, and you can't put your hand in there to take it out. Or there are sections where you can slip in a $1 bill, or a $2 bill. And also next to it is a basket, an empty basket. And so after the prayer of the faithful, the priest announces, I announce, that if the children have any gifts for the poor, they may come up at this time to contribute. And so here you have all these little kids jumping in from all the different aisles, and they bring their box of rice or their can of peaches or whatever the case might be. And they put those in the basket. And some kids, they just want to do with the cash. So they have change that they put into this contraption or the dollar bills. But it's interesting, too, because you mentioned something that's very prevalent. At one time, and it was in the 90s, many churches decided to work the honor system where there was no collection taken up. And so they would bring a symbolic gift at the offertory two people would do that. But no collection was taken up because people were asked to contribute the way they wanted, monthly, weekly, yearly, biannually. They could do what they wished. And so they found that that wasn't working. And the other thing, too, is what happens when you have the Lilies and the poinsettias coming to church, you know what I mean? Easter and Christmas. If they don't know the system, they don't feel they have to give anything. So, it's wow, this is great. And so basically, many of the churches...
You're talking about the Creasters.
Yes.
Okay.
Many of the churches decided that doesn't work, so let's take up collections again. But even the taking up of the collection, we have, depending on where the church is situated, many people do not put in anything in the basket because they are contributing on a monthly basis or a biannual basis, and so they don't put money in the basket. But there's enough money to put into the basket that it has to be done. It should be taken up that way. It's kind of an interesting thing because when you speak about people not putting in, they might get embarrassed because people are looking, look at that. The Murphys didn't put anything in there, this type of thing.
Or the Murphys just put a 50 in there.
But what they do now is, not now, none of this is working anymore for some reason. But you would come into the church and you took a little, it was almost looked like a coin. On it says, I have contributed. So when the basket was passed, at least they put something in the basket, okay?
Oh.
And so that it took the place of the envelope or the cash. And so, but even that just didn't appeal to people.
Didn't do it, eh?
So then we go back to the old ways.
I like the idea, though, by the way. I like that idea.
The old way is to do the regular collection, knowing that there are a number of people, depending on where the church is situated, because you brought up the idea of electronic giving, which is happening everywhere, but more prevalent in certain churches than in others, depending on the area where the church is. So you're going to pass the basket, but by the same token, there are people still going to contribute monthly, yearly, biannually, and so on. And so you have to get used to that. So not everybody puts money into, and you don't have as much of that looking as they used to in the past, at least in some churches. So nobody's looking to see if so-and-so is putting money in or not. But they know that if they're not putting the money in, it's because they're doing it on a monthly basis or whatever.
Yeah.
However, while that is happening, the kids have already done theirs. They do it by themselves because I think it's refreshing for the people to see these young people come up, put their can of food into the basket or their dollars into this contraption or the coins into the contraption. So there's so many different ways of giving, and we have to allow for that.
Don't you think it's important, though? I know that my father made me do this. And I hope that parents still do this. It has to be from your little stack of money. It might be the tooth fairy. I hope somebody doesn't give their child a $5 bill as they're walking into church. That's just me. If I seem like the angry old man, get off my lawn, Gran Torino, call me Clint Eastwood. But I think it's important for the kid to realize that these are the little expenditures he's going to have throughout his life.
Well, that's the whole idea of, and it's not been taught properly, okay? That's the whole idea of those kids bringing up their gifts.
Right.
See, what happens is this, the reality of the situation. When we call upon the children to bring their gifts up for the poor, well, they don't come prepared. So what they do, the parents slip them $1 so that they could put the thing in.
Sure.
But I don't think they've had that little innocent lecture at home. We have to take into account that we have to share what we have. And so today, what are you going to share with the poor? And so it would be nice for the kid to respond, well, I have 50 cents, or I have $1, or I have $2, whatever the case might be. That'd be great. Why don't you put it into your little envelope, and when the basket is passed, you do that. The whole idea is to train them that as they grow older,
Right.
they will know that they have an obligation. Does it happen? No. Should it happen? I think yes.
Yes.
And so I don't think you're so old thinking that way. I think it's a great thing to teach the kids. Now, I think priests are at a point where they don't want to talk about money anymore, but they have to, and on occasion. But that wouldn't be a bad idea to bring that across to the people so that the children themselves would know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the church where I work seems to have a lot of children. Not all churches these days have a lot of children.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it's even more important in churches like where I work for the kids to be taught the proper reasoning for bringing in a little contribution.
I don't know. It's sort of like as a kid, I worked pretty hard doing that paper route. I didn't like getting up early in the morning doing that free press route, stacking about 50 papers into those saddlebags on my Huffy bike, cruising all around the neighborhood before the sun was even up. And sure enough, when I did collect and I did get people to pay me, that was the toughest part of having a paper route.
Sure.
Well, I don't think you brought it Tuesday and Wednesday, so I'm not going to give you the full $1.50. You're only getting $1.25. I'm like, no, you're killing me with this. You're ruining my business model here.
That's right.
But I still had to. My dad always made sure that money went somewhere that I could always. That money was deemed your money, Kenny. And that money would also have to be divvied up, okay? I had the fun stuff I was saving for, the new baseball mitt, or whatever the case may be. But there was always something for the church. To this day, I still find something rather romantic about that. That memory.
I think it's beautiful.
That memory of my father teaching me that there's a moral high ground that comes with earning a little money and giving it to the church.
Sharing.
And it just seems to me that, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old. And the way I sounded right there, I did. I sounded old. I'm not sure people find time to kind of pass along that lesson anymore.
I don't think people find time to do a lot of teaching to their children or with their children. And maybe I'm being judgmental at this time, which I think I am to an extent. But I find that things of that sort have to be done. But we live in such a world where kids have 3 or 4 different activities to carry out during the week. Some sports, some non-sports. And so parents are frantic about driving them to the various music lessons, to the football practice, to whatever it is.
Yep.
And so that other stuff just goes by the wayside. And it shouldn't. I'm with you, Ken. I think what you're presenting has nothing to do with being old or young. I think this is something that should be taught. It should be taught in such a way that you're not putting it down the children's throats, but, let them understand that we have wealth, we share whatever wealth we have. Mm-hmm. Some have more than others. There's some people that can give $5, some could give only 50 cents. But it's giving that counts.
Do you, because I've seen it, I don't know if you have, you seen some of the younger kids fooling around with those little iPads in church?
Oh, definitely. But that could be understandable depending on how young you're talking about, because it's a means of keeping the very young entertained.
Okay.
And so that the parents, they bring the young people. And so these young people, I'm talking about people that could hardly walk, okay? So maybe 1.5, 2 years old.
Yeah.
And so they play
but
with
it. They can use an iPad.
Oh, they can.
I know, it's
they
shocking.
can teach me. Believe me.
You
go to that little kid
you
and say,
and me.
how do I do this?
Yeah.
But anyway, so yes, they do it. I don't think it happens once they get on to being 5 or 6 or 7. But it does happen. Well, maybe it does. I don't know.
Well, I'm just saying that, those are the little distractions that, I don't remember being 2.5, or 3. I really don't. I don't think anybody really does.
No, but we had coloring books.
Yeah, and they would be religious coloring books.
Right, exactly.
Or there'd be something in the bulletin that would have that page for the kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And your folks would let you bring a couple of crayons. They got that.
Sure.
Okay, I mean, they understood that. But I just find it to be, when you just said that's just not a priority anymore, kind of wonder, okay, well, maybe it should be. How hard is it? Can we just get in our cars and not go right to our devices with our kids, including us?
Oh, I'm not arguing against you. I'm just smiling because I'm thinking of the toothpaste again.
Yeah, that's right. No, we're not. We're never going to put the toothpaste back in that tube. That's just the way it goes. I guess that the most constructive time that I had with my father would be when my father would take me on little trips with him, and that's when we would have talks.
Sure.
Whereas now, if you put your son next to you in a car, he's going to grab his iPhone and start texting or finding some game while Dad is driving along. And those were the times that were so important to me as a kid, because that's when we would discuss things like that. You understand what you got there, right? You got that little stack of envelopes. You realize why you're doing that, right? Not really, but why? Well, because you're supporting the church, and that's how we all manage to help the poor and help the church and help Father Wilk. I'm waxing Norman Rockwell now. I guess I pine for those days.
Well, that's reality. I think that's something wonderful that you're doing.
Yeah.
There's nothing old-fashioned about it. Unfortunately, it's gone by the wayside.
So it has.
And again, and I don't want to judge, but from what I can see, it doesn't seem to be a priority.
Has anybody come up with an app for a kid, that can do the same thing?
Yeah.
All right, here's your app, all right? Hit on that app, and it'll explain to you.
Tell you why you do what you do.
Yeah, no, here's why you're going to put $2 in that little envelope every week, and you're going to drop it in the basket. It's that easy. But it's amazing how times have changed. But at the end of the day, we're managing to survive. But again, the last 2 podcasts, we've sort of been waxing poetic, if you will. And I'm just glad to hear that the tradition of kids still having a role, having a part in understanding, at least they understand by walking up. A lot of kids, that's difficult for them to do, period. By themselves, walk up and put a can of food in a box.
But they love doing it, though, when they start doing it. Like, their faces light up, they're smiling.
Yeah.
I give them the high five.
That was going to be one of my final questions for you. So you actually high five the little gangsters.
Oh, I do, yeah.
Give it up. Give it up.
Oh, they're so good.
Yeah, they love to high five, don't they?
And the people love to see that.
Do young kids ever look you in the eye and say, "Thank you, Father"?
Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay. What about communion, when a little kid goes to communion? Especially if it's, let's say a second grader who usually gets his first communion or her first communion in the second grade. They feel very, very special, right?
Oh, very much so.
And as they get older and you watch them get older, how do you find the respect level for the Eucharist?
Well, it disappears.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
I'm just being realistic.
No, I know that.
And again, and I can't judge everyone, but that's what it seems.
I'm so glad you are, though.
That's what seems to happen, okay? And again,
the excitement of that light sort of starts to
fade.
Yeah.
It's related to what you said before. People don't have the time, because they're driving the kids all over the place, to give that little lesson to the kids. That this is Jesus you're receiving.
Right.
That's really Jesus. And so we have to be grateful that we have it, and so on and so forth. And so after the first communion, the next step is confirmation. And then that means they've graduated from religion, so they don't have to do any religion ever again.
Game over. I can go now. Bye-bye.
That's right. It's over with.
Yeah.
That's the danger with having confirmation as a carrot. As soon as we do confirmation, no more religious ed. Well, okay, that means I graduate. I don't need to go.
Yeah. There was a band called Harper's Bazaar, and they used to do a song called "Slow Down, You Move Too Fast." Okay. You got to make the morning last. All right? So that's what we got to do, folks. We got to slow down. We move too fast. We got to make that morning last. My favorite part of the day is the morning, and I know it is for you as well.
Oh, it is, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So say a prayer, we can work through this thing, will you?
We have enough faith that can happen. Okay?
I trust you all the way. Unequivocally or unequivocably?
No, unequivocally, but
that's always been one of those.
You've got the wrong person. You should trust. You should pick holy people.
Ladies and gentlemen, the holiest man I know. Give it up for Father Joe Grimaldi and the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast.
See you soon. Thank you. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.